Yeah.
Well, we are here with Mike and Suzanne Schatzman. Today, we're gonna just have some fun talking. We have some questions, and I think you'll have some answers.
Hopefully.
And
Not good answers, but
I'm sure they will be very good answers. And so Mike and Suzanne have been in global missions for nearly 2 decades. And some time in between Estonia and Portugal, where they are now, and Lisbon, and they are with Agape Campus, which is really Cru Campus, if you're more familiar with that term here in the U.S. And so, been there for nearly 10 years
yeah.
in Lisbon. And so, wow, you guys are like veterans. You're my heroes.
We feel like veterans now.
You guys are like our heroes.
Oh,
And so anyway,
that.
just got done writing a book and kind of in process, and we wanted to spend some time just asking some questions about that. But more than anything else, just to get to know you. We're going to use you and put you on our website for people to log on and meet the people that we
Good.
love. And so, anyway,
They have 3 children.
that's exactly where I was going. Tell us a little bit about your family and your expanding family now, with little one heading back with you of a canine variety.
Yes,
Of a different kind of
yeah,
variety.
that's right.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 3 children. Now they're grown up. Our oldest is almost 20. He's a freshman in Austin at St. Edward's University. And then we have our middle son. He is a junior in high school. And then our youngest is 8th grade, and that's a girl. So we have 2 boys and a girl. And our newest addition to the family is a very cute little miniature golden doodle named Lizzie. And she's been keeping us up a lot, but we're excited about the future with her.
In about
Yeah.
3 months,
In about
there will be a
3
lot
months.
of people very jealous of
Yes,
your miniature golden doodle.
right now, not so much.
That's right.
Yeah.
So tell us when you head back.
2 weeks from now, we head back. We'll head back as a family of 3 plus the dog, because our oldest will stay here for university. Our middle guy actually will stay living with some family friends and finish high school here in the States. That's a new development for us, a little raw for us. We all think it's for the best, and
It's definitely been God's clear leading, and he's super excited, thrilled, hates that he'll be away from the family, but is so excited for the opportunities. And it just seems like it's definitely what is the best for him. And we never thought we would do anything like that. Boarding school, we kind of thought, oh yeah, that might be an option sometime for some child if they need, but we had never even thought about having them stay with someone in the U.S., but that's what's kind of the path that has been put before us. So.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like in your windshield right now,
Yeah.
going back.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about your parents' heart and that transition as a family. We'll try to. I brought some Kleenex in.
I think we could either one probably break down at any moment, but we've done that so much now. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
I think Mike actually said it the best. He said, as far as our oldest, we've been preparing with all of our children. You prepare to launch them, to help them fly, and so from the moment that they're even conceived, you start praying for them, and that. So for our oldest, it's been the preparation, and so we kind of have had a lot of years, even this last whole year, preparing for him to stay in Austin when we head back to Portugal. So that we're prepared for, and he's already had 1 semester, and he's been thriving and doing well. So that's an easier one for us. But our middle son, it's been.
We just thought we had another year and a half.
Yeah.
And so we've had 3 or 4 months to process this,
And to make the decision, and then oh wow, this is happening. So Mike, I think, said it best, because he said, if we didn't have hearts, then it's an easy decision in all the ways he's thriving spiritually, academically, socially, relationally, everything. But we have hearts. So that's the hard
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And that family piece is huge. So I think
Yeah, I
that's the hardest
said,
thing.
our middle guy Judson, I said, not too long ago, I said, if I start getting real preachy and teachy, it's because I thought I had a year and a half with you, and now I've got to put all my stuff that I wanted to tell you
In 2
into
weeks.
6 Yeah,
In 6 weeks, exactly. And he has come to me and said, and I'm like, remember that? Oh, that's why. He said. So yeah.
Well, we had the privilege of visiting you a couple times in Portugal ourselves and
We loved it.
realize how much your family does mean to you and how precious those moments are with them. And so your father's heart, because you do have hearts,
yeah.
your father's heart, what's processing through your mind, Mike?
I'll be honest with you, there's guilt. Because who sends their kid away, right?
Yeah.
Not sending them away, we're not, but who lets them go? There's a little bit of guilt, like I'm relinquishing my responsibility as a dad. It's my dad, my responsibility is to get him all the way through and launch him, and he's still learning how to drive. So like I'm having to hand that over to somebody else to do, which
Well, that may not be a bad thing.
that's true.
He's doing really
That's
well.
true.
And Mike's done a great job teaching him.
So there's guilt, and then there's just oh my gosh, there were so many things, there's so many other conversations I wanted to have, and so much other time I wanted with him, because I genuinely do enjoy him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a fun guy, and
He's
I
a great
like
kid.
hanging out with
He's
him.
so
Yeah.
enjoyable. He's a delight. So
So I think, there's a lot of grief, and I think right now I'm holding it at bay, but I think come January 16th it will be a different story.
we're going to be a total, puddle of mush in Portugal when we get back. So no, I do think you're right. The thing is, he's so delightful. He's enjoyable, and I think we have been preparing so long to have just it go from 5 down to 4, even for our daughter. The 4 of us were like, oh, we get to do these things now too. Okay, so Kater's not going to be there, our oldest, but okay, with Judson and Lainey, it'll we'll be able to do these things, and they were even excited about some time just between the 2 of them growing and their relationship, and so I think a lot of that's like, whoa, wait a second. Yeah.
So Lainey's doing okay?
Yeah, she's
Yeah,
okay.
I
She's
think
kind of thus the dog.
Emotional support.
Emotional support animal. No,
She's
that's not
excited to go back because she's got a great group of friends there, and
She's got a great school and she's got a great system. She's got,
but she's grieving the loss of her brothers, and so
Yeah.
she's got a great support system over there too. And honestly, she moved when she was almost 3, not even 3. So Portugal's home to her.
Right.
It's familiar.
Yeah.
Right.
And she really misses home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You guys have been involved in global missions for like almost 2 decades now. And I know you had a stint in between being in Estonia first, and I think that's where you met, right? You
Yeah.
guys fell in love in Estonia?
we did. We
Yes.
fell in love there. We met in the U.S. beforehand, but
Oh, you
we
did?
actually
Okay.
started, liking each other and fell in love in Estonia.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you were there for roughly 9 or 10 years, right?
8
8
years, yeah.
8 years. Came back to Austin, and then you're in Austin what?
7 years.
7 years, and then almost 10 years now in
10 years.
Portugal.
in Portugal,
So-
yeah.
You guys don't look that old.
Well, thanks, Dan.
But what
Feel
what
it.
has the what is the past? How's the past shaped you as just people, as missionaries, as people who have given their life to go to a different culture? How has the past shaped you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things we've had the advantage of having a starter country in a sense. I always used to joke that like, wouldn't it be great to have a trial kid that you can make all your mistakes on, and then have your
It
real
doesn't
kids?
stay.
But you can edit that out.
You can give them back.
But I think Estonia really, helped form both of us in a lot, our theology, our spirituality, our walks with God, but also our ministry philosophy. I think, at least for me, I'll speak for me, I don't want to speak for you on this. I think in Estonia, I don't think I was as kingdom-minded. I think I was trying to build my ministry. And when you do that, you get real defensive when anybody comes into your territory because you've got to guard and protect your territory. I think I was trying to do that and learned a lot through that somewhat, learned a lot through that. And I feel like that's helped shape us in Portugal to, I think, have much more of a kingdom mindset, be ready to partner with others, and just to be much more open-handed with resources and things like that. And so I think that was huge. Estonia really shaped us in a theology of suffering. I don't really feel like the U.S., in my U.S. Christianity, we have a deep developed theology of suffering, but our church in Estonia is 172 people, second largest church in the city. And literally everybody, except we were the only two Americans in it, literally everybody had been either had a family member or themselves had been either murdered under communism or put in prison unjustly under communism. And in fact, we had three old ladies, grandmothers that we would drive to church every Sunday, and they had suffered a ton under communism. And I think that they and our pastor really helped us develop a much more rich theology of suffering, because that's in the Bible, a theology of suffering. We just don't really talk about it much.
Yeah. And I think in our experience, probably growing up in America, and some of the, I wouldn't say the teaching that we got in our American perspective, but I would say that we even when you look at the TV and the ads, everything's to relieve suffering, to relieve, pain, and we try to get rid of it. We try to get away from it. Where I think the suffering in Estonia, the idea was it's part of life. So when you talk about the theology of suffering, in Estonia we were taught you can't escape suffering, nor should you really try to. Not that you don't, do some things to alleviate maybe the pain or discomfort, but it's going to be there. So you need to embrace it, and you need to learn how to walk through it and how to grow through it, and that God has things in the midst of that for us to grow us and to get closer to Him. So that theology was something we really learned through the Estonians.
Yeah.
And I think that was really revolutionary to us. So I think that's also helped shape us in the sense of the hardships you do face, and not only in life and everyone faces, but like as far as being in a different country and the different hardships that we faced. I think, that's really helped give us a good foundation, maybe a more complete foundation.
Yeah. I think we also learned in Estonia to platform national believers and turn things over to nationals, and that's been our goal all along. We always say to work ourselves out of a job, and we did that in Estonia. And then in Portugal, starting right away from day one, it was always about how do we platform Portuguese to take over, to lead. And I think we feel like we have, as Americans, we have a real role and an important role, but that role is not to be the center and the star, but it's to be the one that's developing leaders and developing the next generation of national leaders to take over.
Sure. So you spoke in terms of embracing the pain, the difficulty, just the discomfort. What kind of guidance could you give somebody in becoming okay with embracing the difficulty? What would you tell them in terms of what that looks like, or is it so individual that maybe there aren't any key components to it?
I think
because you can't get away from it.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it.
I mean, it's one of the things we've talked about in this, and one of the reasons we wanted to talk about it in the book is I think it's just so core is get comfortable being uncomfortable. We have our family motto is we do awkward, because sometimes it's, that's, it just can be really uncomfortable in having to put yourself into different situations. But also in the different things that come your way, the discomfort's going to be there. So we've got to get comfortable and expect that it's going to be uncomfortable and there's going to be hard things.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I think two big lessons I feel like I've learned. One is the cross is the ultimate demonstration of God's love. And Romans 5:8 says God shows us his love and that while we're yet sinners, Christ died for us. And we're so tempted, I'm so quick to say, yeah, I know God loves me, but I really know he loves me if this works out, if this problem gets solved, if
And we don't say it that bluntly. It's more
but when,
in our mind, right?
When our son, we went through a couple of years in Portugal, tough years, especially with our oldest because of some of the bullying he was going on, and we won't get into all that, but it was pretty intense,
yeah.
and that he was getting bullied, and teachers and things like that too, coming from teachers as well. And in the midst of that going, God, we left everything for this, and this is how you treat us? This is what you're doing to our son? I thought you loved us. And I realized I was doubting God's love because I was saying, your cross is not enough. I need this problem solved.
I think it was kind of like, wow, it really did make us doubt God's character. I know for me, there was a big stage, a season, not even just stage, a season when I had to really work through and go back to, because I was doubting, like, if you're really truly loving, why do you allow all of this suffering and this pain to come to a child? And why don't you see that this is more than it's really damaging him, and it's really affecting him, and then, you know, when is enough enough? And my enough was a long time ago. So how can you be loving and say that your enough is even allowing it to go longer? So it's subtle. It's not just saying, if you love me, you won't let that happen. It's saying that, but in a much more subtle way. And I had to really process and unpack that and get to the core of, this is really what I am saying. And that doubting his love, and doubting that he is love, and doubting that he allows suffering for a purpose that I won't ever understand fully, but to trust.
Well, you will.
Huh?
You will understand it
On
fully.
this side of heaven.
Yeah.
This side of heaven. I will never understand it fully, right? I'll never understand it fully this side of heaven.
Yeah.
And so, but yet in it,
Yeah.
you know, he still draws us and grows us in if we go lean into him. And I think that was the big thing, Stan. One of the things I think our past helped us see, for me, has been, I have a choice. I can either lean in and press into this, and press into the difficulties or the things that were hard and are hard, or I can go ahead and get comfortable. And it's not necessarily a wrong choice to do that. It's just, what am I going to miss out on, or what is it that God has for me? Is that what he has for me at the time?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
It's kind of in Isaiah 43, you know, the first couple of verses. When you walk through the water,
he'll be there.
Yes.
Exactly.
you know, when you go through the fire.
Yeah.
Will not.
It's not if, but
Yeah.
it's when.
Yeah, exactly.
What? I know that you've been here in the States for about 6 months. Is that correct? 7 months, something like that. What's been uncomfortable here? How have you embraced the?
There's been more uncomfortable here than when we left. Probably because, you know, you change when you live 10 years and overall 18 years in other countries. It changes you, and you kind of like, in a way, it's not a bad thing, but it's different.
Like, for example, you can't show up to dinner 30 minutes late without
An excuse? A good one anyway?
Well, no, you just
There's
can't do
no
it here.
excuse for that.
A
In
doctor's
Portugal-
appointment?
in Portugal,
There you go.
if we show up on time for dinner, it's rude.
Yeah.
So it was early on, we were meeting some friends for dinner. It dawned on us, we got to like, oh, they showed up on time, and we're like 15 minutes late. And we thought we were on time.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I would say, I would say our kids are champs, because they've,
Yeah.
uncomfortable, awkward. I think we've experienced a lot of it through our kids. Our daughter, 8th grade, never been.
That's just
American
awkward
school.
for anybody to step into. It's just anywhere in the world.
Never
That's
been
just
in
not-
American school
That's
before.
uncomfortable.
Never been in American school before. She ends up, boom, right in this large public school, diving in 8th grade, and we've been so proud of her. She's plunged in and
Yeah.
gone out for the cross country team, and then after
That's-
cross country ended, she said, I think I want to play basketball, Mom and Dad. So we're like, You've never played before. So she sat down and watched some YouTube videos on how to dribble and how to shoot, and went out
Really?
and worked out for a couple
Yep.
of weeks and went out for the team. And,
She didn't work out for a couple of weeks, like 3 days. She went out with the team.
and,
It was
Natural.
well, anyway.
try out for the school
She is.
play.
She's
and,
doing well.
so she just
She's just
embraced
put herself
all of
out
it.
there, but yeah.
I think sometimes
But
we're
it's
walking
uncomfortable.
into a culture, like as we've gone to our kids' events, we're walking in as strangers and as outsiders constantly, and just trying to meet people, and yeah, and I think that sort of felt awkward a lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No, I think it is an adjustment. Like we're coming from a Southern European mindset where everything's slow, everything is people oriented, I would say, and we're coming to a culture in America, coming back to that, and our kids are coming back to it, where it's very task oriented
Right.
and time orientation, and it's like time is money. It's that kind of a mindset, and that's not the mindset that we've come from, and so. The idea is too, sometimes we find it sometimes uncomfortable because we realize all the mistakes we make in the culture. Like, okay, let's get together with somebody for coffee. And, the expectation is 45 minutes and you're good. But in my mind, I'm kind of like
2 to 3 hours.
an
yeah.
hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I'm kind of like lingering in the conversation. There's just those things that you're like, oh yeah, I've got to put my different hat on.
So
yeah.
cultural miscues like that. And I think, honestly, from a missionary standpoint, I think missionaries are pretty capable people, by and large. You transport
Yes.
yourself to another country, learn another language, you know how to do stuff, you know how to learn and adapt. Coming back to the States, we're back for 6 months, and it's like, we just are needy. And I made that like from
That's
having to
uncomfortable.
borrow beds and dishes, and everything we're in our apartment that's furnished is through people's kindness and graciousness, but it means we had to get out and ask, and that's uncomfortable.
That's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The asking's uncomfortable.
I want to be, especially as a man, I want to be competent. I want to be seen as competent. I want to be seen as I can provide for my family. And here we are back, and I'm like, hey, who's got a spare bed?
Yeah.
And everything else.
It's
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable.
So after a couple of decades of being in different cultures, what would you share with people here, especially people who love the Lord, as far as this from event to event sort of thing versus really embracing relationship? What would you say to people here that you've learned in other cultures?
Well, one thing I'd have to say is we lived in two drastically different cultures. You don't get much different than Estonia and Portugal. Like the Portuguese and Estonians are completely different. Yet, which is really crazy, but yet I would say both of them valued relationship. Estonians only a few for life, and it's a very closed, like social setting and stuff like that, or it was when we lived there. But they valued sincere, deep relationships, and I think everybody values that. Americans value that too, but I'd say that came through time, and time at one time needed to be hours together. And I'd say the Portuguese as well. You have tons of relationships, very friendly, outgoing people, and but the same thing when you say.
Yeah.
So I'd say so we had two drastically different cultures. You have this similarity in the relational aspect, and the way they use their time would probably be spending a longer amount of that. And it's not as event and work driven, whereas they work to live. In America, it's more you live to work, kind of a mindset.
Yeah. I think one of the things we both learned is that people have reasons for thinking the way they do, believing the way they do, and usually it's wrapped up in the story and experiences they've had in their lives. And so just how key it is to take time to push deeper in and say, hey, tell me more why you believe that. Tell me what's going on, what shaped you. Obviously, a lot of times people don't answer it like that, but asking the second and the third and the fourth question to take time to understand where people are coming from, because they have real reasons why they think that. And it's so easy for us to go, oh, they think that, that's just stupid the way they think that. And it's like, no, a lot of times they have past experiences that have shaped them for good or for bad. And,
So what I'm hearing you say is taking the time to
Yeah.
listen and invest
Yeah.
yes,
in listening
Yeah.
and caring enough to listen.
yeah,
Yeah, I think, and I do think that we live in Lisbon. It's a very busy city. It's a capital city of Europe. You can easily get caught up in a whirlwind of activities and events and things like that too. But I think that one of the things we've learned, and for America, for anywhere, is really there's a value in limiting what all we have ourselves, our kids, our family committed to really allow for conversations for us with our kids, to allow time and be intentional in those conversations with our friends, to really be able to go deep, because there's a lot of things in life that get difficult and you need that, right? So I think that's one thing we've learned.
yeah.
And maybe sometimes whenever you come back into your own culture, you see it maybe a little bit more from a different perspective.
Also learned, I've got the value of the table, of the dining table.
That's true.
In Revelation 3:20, Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. He hears my voice and opens the door. I'll come in and dine with him. In Portuguese, it's literally, I will dinner with him. And when we read that to a Portuguese, even a Portuguese non-Christian, they instantly know, wow, Jesus is inviting me into an intimate relationship with him, because
Friendship.
that table, that time around the table is for friends to really bond and family to bond. And
It's a long lingering. I mean, it's a 3-4 hour dinner, and you don't move to the sofa. You don't clean the dishes. You just sit and you have conversation, and you open up and you share. And I think in that idea, for us, when we started having those types of dinners and meals in Portugal, it really opened our eyes to, oh, this is what it is. Because, when you read that verse in Revelations, at least from my American mindset, to dine with them, thinking
30 minute
30
takeout.
minute
It's
take
not
out
fast-
diner. Let's go to
Fast
diner.
food.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is, but it's a good meal. It's nice, and that's all. But it isn't that long, in-depth conversation.
Yeah. And there's something about food that just creates that intimacy. There's a reason I think we're going to be feasting in heaven. I think it's a call to intimacy with each other.
Yeah, friendship.
Friendship, yeah.
So why did you guys decide to write a book on missions?
I think we have a heart to see missionaries succeed and thrive and stay long term. And we went through a period where we watched, not just in our country, but in other countries, a lot of missionaries we knew that made it maybe almost to one term or just finished that first term and returned to the States. And I remember going, oh my gosh, we're like, how much it takes to learn the language, to adapt, get ready, to launch ministry, and then a few months later, literally, they're gone. And they went back for different reasons, but I think in talking with several of them, they would just go, gosh, this was just so hard. And in the middle of all that, we were reading through Matthew, and in Matthew 9, Jesus says the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Matthew 10, he sends out the 12, and he spends.
Well, I'd like to just add in, he spends 10 verses explaining like what they will do, and then 20 verses explaining how hard it's going to be. So 2/3 of the time, he's talking about the hardships they're going to face. And one of the things we were talking about too, all of the people that we knew and we were seeing leave, I would say the majority, none of it was wrong that they left, but several of them told us this was, like when you said, this was so hard, we didn't expect it to be this hard, or this was harder than we had planned on. And I think that's what hit us, like, wow, we do so much in even preparing before we leave to go to the mission field and preparing our people. And we've been a part of doing that for several years here in the States as well. So I think the hard thing is then it's like, oh wow, we do all these things for language or raising our funds, getting our teams together, and then somewhere in the midst, a lot of times we aren't preparing for the hardship that's going to be faced. I think one of the things we talked about too was, wow, in the old days, when the missionaries went out, they would go and it'd be for life, you know, and they went with their coffin, they went with everything. They knew this is the last I'm going to see of my family. We're going to experience, I hope that I can live a few years there and not die from a disease. And I think somehow over the centuries, it's changed. And so we didn't go out with that idea, that mindset at all,
No.
you know. And so I think there's something in that that's like, okay, wait, things have changed.
Yeah.
And
We genuinely want to see missionaries thrive on the field.
Yeah.
We want to see them come back for a second and a third term because we feel like we get more effective the longer we're there. And we think that that's true with others too. So we want to see that. So we thought if we could write something that could help folks, it's not going to alleviate the suffering. I think part of it is the suffering is God's plan for us, but maybe prepare them for, okay, this isn't unusual, and this is common, and part of it too. We've been passionate about the incarnation. I don't know if this is the time to talk about that or not.
I think it'd be great to talk about it.
We've been passionate for a while, especially I think over COVID we started talking. I've been passionate about
no,
it.
yeah. No, I would agree.
My
We
kids
both
like
are. We
to
both
talk
are.
about the incarnation again. But I think
Hopefully they've
we're
got it.
blown away by it.
Yeah, we are.
We talk a lot in Christian circles about the resurrection, which is key and important, but the incarnation is God with us, Emmanuel, God with us. And to us, that's been so foundational, for suffering. When our daughter falls down and hurts and skins her knee, she doesn't want an explanation of why she fell down. She doesn't want the laws of physics and how her body's going to heal itself and things like that.
Or correction for what she did.
Yeah. What she wants the presence of her parents. She wants comforting presence. And the incarnation is God's comforting presence to us, Jesus, in the midst of suffering. But it's also the incarnation when we look at everything Jesus did. It was a lot of hardship. We always say, gosh, if we were God, I would have done it differently. I would have come when there was hot and cold running water. Air conditioning would have been mandatory.
Internet.
Ibuprofen, internet, yeah. I would not have come 2,000 years ago. But he chose to enter in and come, suffer, and then walk among us. And so I think the incarnation has been key to us. I think it's key.
I think it's key because it is, we focus on it during Christmas, right? And that's when I would say the church focuses on it. But it's the other 11 months of the year that is so vital because we can easily get into the trap of living or doing ministry for God and all that, but not the idea of with Him and experiencing Him meeting all the needs that we have in every situation and just daily that Him being with us.
Yeah.
And we're not doing something for Him, but we're doing things with Him.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that
that's
has
a
been
huge shift.
Key. I'd say it's been revolutionary in our approach to ministry.
Yeah.
It's enabled us to, I feel like it's enabled us to relax and enjoy it more.
And even our relationship with God, I
Yeah.
think it has.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say has been the biggest effect on you personally from authoring a book?
I don't know. I don't even know.
I think taking the time to put all these things, we had all these thoughts coming around, like Suzanne mentioned, we do awkward, and that's kind of one of the chapters in the book, and those are life mottos. One we talked about is releasing our rights and stuff. So they were all ideas that were out there here, but it was nice to kind of codify them and put them together and go, oh yeah, these are lessons we've learned. And honestly, as I've read through it, and we were reading it with our kids the other night, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's helped me, reminded me of God's faithfulness
Yeah.
to us over these years and of God's goodness and of these lessons that I think are easy to forget about suffering or about releasing rights.
I think the other thing is, honestly, as we've been starting reading it to our kids, it's like, oh yeah, you need this. And honestly, like, they haven't always seen it all together. They've lived it, a lot of the different experiences, and they've heard it all. as we've talked about it with him. But it's nice for it to all be in one place, for them to even go back and see and us to share with them. Because there's so much of our story in it. It's kind of nice for them to be able to see, oh, this is what that experience or that situation, this is maybe the biblical principle that's lining up with that.
And one other thing I would say is too, it's helped me to remember just how much God has shaped me. I can focus sometimes on the hardships of being a missionary, because it's hard. And I can focus on that, and I can get grumbly and sit there and go, oh God, I've given up this. But as we've written it, it's been great to go, oh my gosh, how I grew, how the Lutheran believers that we interacted with in Estonia really enriched our contemplative life, and how we get to see this and God working in these ways, or in people's lives, or God working in us. It's really served almost as a pile of rocks to remind us of God's faithfulness.
In the book, you talked a lot about rights and relinquishing rights. Expand a little bit more on that. So I thought that was so profound.
Yeah, that was one of the first actually talks I ever heard Mike give. Was when I went over for my 1 year to Estonia, and Mike was doing one of the talks for the briefing that we had when we got into the country, and you talked about releasing your rights, and I was like, wow, I've never heard of this, but it made a lot of sense. So you want to explain it?
So I would say, as Americans, we're kind of obsessed with rights. We've got these rights in our Constitution, then we have a Bill of Rights too, because that's not enough. We add more rights on, which is great. But we serve a Savior who released his rights, and who gave them all up. And in Matthew, Jesus talks about, in the Sermon on the Mount, the eye for an eye, or turn the other cheek, which we all know,
Eye for an eye.
and eye for an eye. Let's edit that and go. He taught Jesus in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus talks, gives his famous turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, give your cloak as well. And in the book we unpack those things. And turn the other cheek, it's really about taking an insult and not insulting when you're insulted in return. But in his missionary life, we're insulted all the time. Sometimes purposely, sometimes indirectly, depending on the culture you're in.
Yeah. I think as we share in the book, there's a lot of those rights that we found that, and we've seen in others that have had to be released, and it goes against some of our, especially our North American culture. I would even say Western culture, to release those, to give those up. But
Philippians 2 definitely talks about how Jesus gave up those rights, and that we're to do the same. I will say, I don't think we get very far and long as missionaries without releasing our rights. We're going to be misunderstood. We say that the root word, the MIS in missionary, stands for misunderstood.
a lot of
Misunderstood. A lot of miss. I mean, misunderstood, sometimes it's in communicating in our second or third language, misunderstanding that. Right. Sometimes it's people misunderstanding our intentions. Sometimes it happens communicating to family and friends back here in the U.S. in our native language, but they're out of our context and they misunderstand. And
there's a lot.
A lot of miss.
Yeah.
How have you experienced? Give us some gory details, some interesting stories about how you've been misunderstood.
The kids' lunch thing, and in Portugal, it's a real thing. Food is a real thing.
Thing.
And we learned, we were educated pretty quickly on what the kids needed to take for lunch, and how definitely we needed not just to give sandwich and chips and fruit or something like this. It needed to be a proper meal for lunch, which included, your main course, which would be a rice, potato, some type of a carb with a meat thing,
Preferably a fish.
Preferably fish, yes, which I never cooked fish, really. Coming from a landlocked state of Oklahoma, we don't do fish very much. So
Few
that
balls.
was new.
But you
Yeah.
forget about the
So,
pureed
then
vegetable
also
soup.
they had a soup. Their vegetables are usually made into soups, and they kind of puree them, and that's how they have their vegetables. So that was also a requirement as we
And then a
learned.
fruit.
And then fruit, and for their dessert. And then they also had a morning snack and an afternoon snack. So not just the lunch, it was also the morning snack and
Like
that
the
could be a
sandwich
sandwich.
is the
That could be-
afternoon snack, yeah.
That could be a sandwich. So, we're packing everything. I mean, they literally have this little lunch pail type thing that's like a cooler. And I mean, kids are this tall with this big, cooler, and you're going, wow, can you sure you can carry that? And so one of the parent-teacher meetings we were in,
Let me say, every parent-teacher meeting goes about 3 hours.
it's not just, and by the way, parent-teacher meeting is not just us with the teacher.
It's
It's
the
all the
whole-
parents with the teacher at the same time.
Okay.
And it's an hour to 3 hour meeting. And there's a lot of things that gets discussed, but always one of the main topics is how is the food? Because, the school does provide some food that you can buy into a meal system.
And it's usually a 30 to 45 minute discussion. It's a 3 hour meeting, and 30 to 45 minutes is dedicated on the food. One
You're
year,
not wrong.
one of the moms pulled out her smartphone and she said, I've been tracking the soups that have been being served by the school, and she went through all the soups and had
said that-
complaints about the certain soups. And we're like,
they needed to have more variety or different things or healthier. But one time it was one of the parents was very upset because somebody had brought in pizza for lunch, as in their lunch pail, not like ordered fresh pizza, but brought pizza, little pizzas.
who
And
do you think they're looking at in that classroom? It's the only two Americans.
everyone is like, oh, they did? And, we're
Wasn't us?
It wasn't us. We did the soup. We did the main course. We did the fruit for dessert. We did all these things. We
were
didn't
quick
do the
studies.
pizza. We're Americans. We didn't do the pizza. So
Yeah.
but
Another story, our oldest son, going into 5th grade, comes home one day, hey, they're having elections for class president.
oh my.
I'm gonna run for class president. We're like, go for it. Gets up there, he's been in the country for a year, he's a pretty good upfront public speaker, gives his campaign speech.
And this is a new school for him because it's junior high now. All of a sudden he's moved into junior high in 5th grade.
Wins the election for his little class president, for his 30 kids in his classroom. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, he comes back, he goes, oh, Mom and Dad, I don't know what I got myself into. I was like, well, you're class president. I said, what did you think you were going to be doing? He goes, I thought I'd be helping plan like the Christmas party, and maybe,
We're like, of course, that's what
maybe
you should
saying,
be
hey,
doing.
maybe we can get better snacks in the vending machines, things like that. And he said,
And that's what we're thinking. That's the right idea.
he said, as class president, I'm responsible for taking all the grievances that the kids have to the teacher. Or the key ring, and so he said, like, Rodrigo's upset because he's sitting next to Mariana, and Mariana is talking too much, or Rodrigo wants his seat changed, so I've got to take that to the teacher and negotiate where we're going to put him. And somebody else is upset.
He's the
because
liaison, and not in a good
It's like, I'm
sense.
just managing conflict. So, misunderstood. Clearly, class president meant something different.
I remember one time returning from a short trip back to the States. I spent like 3 months in the States, long enough to where it's probably during the summer, and it wasn't that much noticed, but it was a little bit noticed by some of our other parents in the school. And as we came back, they said, "Oh, good, it's glad to see you here." And there was a couple of moms that I was talking with, and one, glad to see that you're back. Was it a good trip? Yes, it was. It was nice. It was good to see family and friends. And the other one quickly said right away, "Oh, I can see that you've lost all of your ability to speak our language." That's from my mistakes. And I was kind of thinking, wow, that's not the most encouraging thing someone could say. But at the same time, I was like, wait a second, but I just finally got to see my family and go back to our home, and yet that wasn't even much of a value, although that is a value for it. Was like that wasn't the thing that was valued.
Yeah.
So I felt very misunderstood,
Yeah.
and not a lot of grace in that situation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. When our oldest son was having the struggles where he was getting bullied a
Yeah.
lot and things like that, people were looking at us in the States and saying, why don't you just homeschool him? And we said, well, that isolates him socially when we do that. And they said, no, surely, here in America we have homeschool co-ops, we have all these things like that. And we kept
Activities.
saying, we have activities, we have homeschool sports leagues and everything like that. And we kept saying, no, those don't exist here. Everybody is dual income. Moms can't afford to stay at home. They all work. And like, oh no, if you just really look, you'll find it.
And we found that it wasn't an option. There was a few people scattered across the country doing it, but there weren't those type of options. It wasn't a community he could get into.
Yeah, but I don't feel like we could convince people back in the States that homeschool leagues really didn't exist.
Yeah.
So not only are you misunderstood in Portugal, you're misunderstood here
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
home country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably.
Yeah. Then there's my son, my middle boy, told the girl the other day, he meant to say, hey, you're my last resort for a ride home. And he still gets some of his Portuguese and English mixed up. And he said, I told her, you're my last priority. He goes, I don't know why she got so upset about that. And I was like, oh, sad.
It's just little mistakes.
I said, did you mean like you're my last option for a ride home? He goes, yeah, isn't that priority? That means,
Don't tell a girl she's your last priority, especially if there's any interest.
Yeah,
Just not.
especially if you want to ride home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were asked a really interesting question last week, and so I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
what is the biggest problem you're trying to solve today?
I mean, I honestly, my mind jumps to the practical. So it's what the biggest problem is. How are we all going to get set up for the next month? Where some of us are going back to Portugal, Mike's staying here to help our middle son get set up in the wonderful home he's going to be staying in with these dear people, dear friends, and then our other son to college. So I'm thinking probably from that mother standpoint and all of that. But I think overall, probably the bigger problem for me is, how is my faith? Am I trusting? And my lack of faith and trust of all these details. And so am I worrying about this? Am I worrying about all the other things, all the tasks, all of the relationships, all of these things? How am I worrying about that? Or am I truly relinquishing that and being full of faith that God's got this, and He's good. So we're good because He's good. Not
Right.
we'll be good.
That's good. Like Suzanne, my mind instantly goes to a million tasks, to-do list, to transition, to shut down the apartment and move. But like Suzanne, because you inspired me.
Yeah.
I think the bigger problem is how do I take that to God? And I had this, I can tend to perseverate and just go over and over again in my mind all my problems and things like that. And I had this kind of word picture that came to my mind not too long ago about the difference between an orphan and a child. An orphan living in an orphanage has food and shelter. They have those things, but they don't have the relationship with the father. Whereas a child living in a home has food and shelter, but has a relationship with the father. And I think when I sit there and just perseverate and go over and over again in my mind, my problems, I'm living like an orphan, and I'm relinquishing the privilege I've got as a child of the father to sit there and take all that to the father. And so I think my biggest problem is remembering to live as a child of the father and not as an orphan.
That's good.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys? I know 2 weeks from now you're heading back,
Yes.
but I mean, what are you anticipating God will do in the next 3 to 5 years?
Grow us a lot.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing. I need a lot of growth. I mean, one thing we're going to do is we're writing another book,
You are.
But it's just a fun one. It's what I've wanted to do. It's the one I've wanted to do.
Not this one. Like,
No, I do like this. I think this is good. It's just, this is not like the upbeat book. Like,
Oh.
hey, I mean, it's hardships and expecting hardships. Whereas,
Oh, I thought the complete opposite. I was like digging it.
oh no, I think it's good and I enjoy reading it myself. I totally enjoy reading it. But it's not exactly the most light topic. Whereas the one we're going to put together is accomplished. It's just more probably memoir or something like that. All are crazy, silly, funny stories that have happened.
Stories along the way.
Stories along the way, exactly. And there's crazy things and silly things that we just want to have all together in one place. So it's really, that's what I mean. It's like a fun book. It's
Yes.
like silly fun.
yeah, yeah. And I think too, I think we're trusting God and hoping and praying to replace ourselves in these next 3 to 4 or 5 years in terms of handing over our role in the campus, leading the campus ministry and the human resources side of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're becoming back. We don't know what that means, but
It doesn't mean that we're leaving Portugal. That's not what we're saying.
We have a definite. We feel like we're coming into a point. We have a definite role as we're the old staff in Portugal, and
So we're kind of already in that, the mature role and the, we're not exactly wise sages, because I think we still need a lot of wisdom.
right,
But
yeah.
that's still we need. But we're kind of in that, and I feel like we're kind of,
But we really want to help develop our young staff
Yeah.
and develop national leaders, and that's
And
not just in the campus ministry, but we have in Crew Agape, we have Portugal, we have 6 different ministries, so we want to develop the.
in all of the
Yeah.
whole national ministry. Also within Crew, within Europe, hopefully we'll be able to, you know, be available if they want and would like for us to be a resource to staff and care for
Yeah.
staff
Yeah.
in ways that, however, God leads. So that's exciting.
I think you guys would be amazing at that.
I do too.
Thank
coming
you.
from
Thank
our
you.
position,
We
especially.
appreciate that. Means a lot to us. Thank you for
Yes.
saying that. We think that it's something that is, it's been so vital for us to have.
Yeah.
And we just, there's people that God has brought and along the way have just given life
Yeah.
to us that we would love to be able to
Yeah.
give that back.
Yeah.
And so that would be a privilege to get to do.
And by the way, I would say you cannot underestimate the role that you guys play with Missionaries Care Collective and just speaking in and bringing hope
Yeah.
and I want to say a calming presence, if you want to call it that, to us and to
Sane
others on the
presence
field.
too, sanity.
Yeah, and a praying presence and just a sense of, hey, you know, ministry and life goes up and down, but in the middle of it, you guys have just been a voice for just a continued walk with God.
And steadiness,
yeah.
I think.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
So
You cannot
we've-
underestimate the importance of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think it's vital.
And you
It's-
guys-
And I think there's a lot of need for that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it
Sure.
sounds like maybe you be pressing into that need,
Yeah,
you know, in Europe.
we'd love to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember the first time you guys came, and it really hit us at a time when our whole ministry was rocked because of one of our staff members with cancer. And
Yeah,
you guys just really provided a godly, steady presence.
for not just us too,
Yeah,
also
but-
our national staff. And
God is good.
Yeah.
At just the right time.
Yeah.
just the right.
Well, maybe we'll do this all together
Yeah,
sometime.
we'd like
That
that.
would
So-
be fun. Yeah, love to see what God has planned, you know.
Well, thank you guys for this time that you've provided. I know that there are a lot of things that need to be in place, and even today you need to get to see your daughter's last basketball game, and so we really appreciate the time that you've
Yes.
taken to just spend some time with us, to just have a conversation, really, and to you know, have the opportunity. We love being with you guys. We love just spending time.
We love
And
to.
We love to
this
We
is
enjoy this.
Yeah,
That communion.
right.
Yeah.
yeah.
So we want to come to Portugal and have some 6 and 7 and 8 hour
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, we'll just start them at 2.
Yeah.
That's all depends on when you start them, that's right.